Hi there, I'm Frederick Van Johnson, host of This Week in Photo. I'm sitting here with Mr. Gordon Lang of CameraLabs.com, the man that writes those reviews that you kind of have to, savor.
Have a strong drink beforehand?
Or 2 drinks over 2 nights.
Exactly.
Because they're long and comprehensive. Yeah. And don't say anything about it. Karen is upstage and she's watching, making funny faces over there. Karen Hutton's in the house, by the way. Anyway, so we're going to be talking about, so first of all, we're here in Nashville, Halloween night. It's windy outside. It's raining. We're in a beautiful hotel here, courtesy of Sony, who has provided us with all of this, well, this gear, not so much that gear, all this gear to play with for the week. And we're going to talk in this little interview about Gordon's initial impressions. You're preparing a really full, detailed, deep dive into these guys. But since we're still here, everyone's getting on a plane tomorrow, I wanted to just kind of pick your brain about what you think now, initially. Hot off the press, we just came off a little excursion today. What do you think? So first question, what do you think overall now versus when you were just dreaming of a full-frame DSLR, full-frame mirrorless camera?
Well, the interesting thing is when you're testing cameras, as you know yourself, Frederick, you have a look at the specifications, you see the briefing, you get these preconceptions or even misconceptions about how it's going to be, and then you take it out when you actually get it. Some things work better than you expect, some things don't work quite as well as you expect, and there's always some surprises. So I think that's what I found. The biggest thing I've really found is that these may look like small cameras, but they're very, very serious cameras. And I mean that in a good way and a bad way. In the good way, you're getting a massive amount of power in a very small, light, portable camera. But you've got to think that I have a prop here. This is a Nikon D800D.
It's a real one.
Yeah, that I rented from Borrow Lenses for this event. And I brought it along because I wanted to do some handling and quality comparisons, which you can see at CameraLabs.com. But the most obvious thing is when you look at these 2 cameras, I mean, this camera is absolutely massive and this one is tiny.
It is, yeah.
This admittedly does have a much brighter lens than this one, but try and ignore the lens and just look at the body difference. It's insane.
But the same size sensor in each one, made from the same manufacturers as well, right?
The same resolution, same sort of technology. They are different sensors, but similar sort of thing. And when I was testing the D800D and the D800, when they came out, the thing that I realized is that if you want to get the most from this camera, you've got to mount it on a tripod ideally. You've got to focus extremely carefully. You've got to treat it almost like a medium format camera. It's not a camera that you run around and snap with. You can, but you can't expect to get the full 36 megapixel potential out of it. It'll perform similar to maybe like a 20 megapixel camera. The thing you've got to remember when you're shooting with the A7R is it's exactly the same. It's no different in that respect. It's got this massively high-resolution sensor in it. Just because it's in a tiny little body doesn't mean you should treat it any differently, but you do. You use it one-handed, you point it out the window.
It feels like that. I mean, it feels like it's designed to be thrown around or bandied about, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Nothing like a bit of bandiness, especially on Halloween.
I love it.
So I think the first surprise that most of us has is when we were looking at our images, especially from the A7R, and we're like, actually, I can see a lot of potential there, but I've got to be a lot more careful about how I shoot with this. Right. Because it is the same inside as this.
So then, who is this camera for? So from what you're saying, the D800, is it D800E?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay, so the D800E and the A7R sounds like they're destined or designed to go towards landscape shooters.
Yes.
People are going to they're going to put them on tripods, they're going to be doing maybe HDR, that kind of stuff. More considered photography.
Exactly.
Rather than I'm going out to do street photography, I'm doing sports, I'm doing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So then where does the A7 slot into that then?
So
is that for everyone else?
Kind of. The A7, they look very similar. This isn't it. We've got an A7 here. This is an A7R. Superficially, the bodies look almost identical, and they are both weatherproofed, but there are very minor differences we found out, like, the dials are slightly different.
Yeah.
The
just
front panel,
really slightly.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know unless you had both of them sitting next to each other.
Well, we had both of them, and I couldn't tell.
Right.
Really.
Right.
The front panel on the A7 is not as strong. It's not the magnesium alloy that you have on the A7R. Little thing, but you'd be hard pushed to really tell the difference. The big difference is the sensor. That it's 24 megapixels on the A7 with embedded phase detect AF points on the sensor.
Describe that. So all that sounded really cool and techie, but what does it mean?
You had me at phase detect.
You had me at phasers and transport?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So describe what that is, that technology is, and why is it important?
Well, previously, on This Week in Photo, previously...
I'm lost.
What you'd have on a live view system, a system with electronic composition, you'd have contrast-based autofocus, and the way that works is the camera has to kind of focus through the subject, go, whoa, I've gone too far, pull it back, whoa, I've gone a bit too far again, and it gets it.
And narrow it down.
It finally gets it, and that's called hunting or searching, and you always get that. They're getting faster, much faster, especially cameras like the Olympus OMD EM5 and EM1 and the Panasonics, very, very fast at doing it, but they are still going, there's that little shimmer at the end.
Right.
What phase detect can do is it actually knows what direction it has to start off going in order to get something in focus. And if it's done properly, it should know when to stop. So it's a lot more confident. And that's what you get in a DSLR head. When it's bouncing off the mirror through the optical viewfinder, you get a phase detect system. How do you get it on mirrorless cameras? They figured out how to actually embed these points on the sensor. This one has it, the A7, the A7R does not. So I don't know if you found this, Frederick. I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Yeah.
But just playing about with them over the past couple of days, I'd say the A7 is definitely more confident, less hesitant, especially in a tracking environment. I was actually doing some tests with Karen earlier, and it's negative, so it's all good. I was doing some tests with, it's cleared up. You don't need to worry.
No more penicillin. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It was faster than we thought, so that's all good.
Karen is mooning us off camera.
I was doing some tests with Karen Hutton earlier, and I had this lady walking towards us with a brisk march. Would you say brisk march, Karen? Brisk march. The A7R, set to continuous autofocus, struggled. I only had a handful of frames in sharp focus. The A7, however, many more of them in focus. It still was far from 100%. I'm going to talk about that more in my review. But of course, the interesting thing, which is what you'd expect, is that when the AF point, the AF area, was within the phase detect area, because it's not the whole sensor, it's just an area in the middle. It was better than when it was outside, where it becomes contrast-based.
How would you say that focus tracking test compares to, say, the Olympus OMD?
Well, it depends which OMD. The EM5, is contrast-based only, so it struggles as well.
It's going to struggle.
I find them
so these guys would win. The A7 would win versus the OMD EM5?
For continuous shooting, but just before I came down tonight, to film this with you, I actually did some single AF tests. That's just where it's not tracking, it's just going to focus on something that's static. And the EM5 was much faster. And the EM1 is a little bit faster than that. And the EM1 also has embedded phase detect AF points, so it can also do that more confident tracking. So these are, ultimately I found these are not the world's fastest autofocus cameras. This one is better than that one, but I still wouldn't say this was particularly fast in that regard.
Here's the big question. So a lot of people are considering, okay, I've been hearing a lot about mirrorless. There's crowds of people on the DSLR side that own these that have been hearing all this buzz about mirrorless, and the one retort that we hear all the time is they're not full frame. The sensors are too small. I can't do the same depth of field that I can do with the full frame sensors. These guys show up. Are all those questions gone? Or are we still in that boat, or what? Well, I'm still confused.
I completely agree with you. The amount of people that I talked about mirrorless, I'm saying mirrorless is great, and they go, I'm not going to touch that until it's full frame. I'm not going to touch until it can match the quality or better the quality of my D800 or my 5D Mark III. And they've done that. Now, I've not done my direct comparisons yet, but hopefully by the time this video comes out, or if you're watching it later on, hopefully I'll have those comparisons.
And I'll link to that from wherever you're watching us.
Thank you. But in terms of specifications, they should be extremely similar. This should be very similar to this, and this should be roughly similar, or even slightly higher resolution than the 5D Mark III. They're both full frame. They have potentially the same shallow depth of field, potentially the same tonal dynamic range, potentially the same noise levels. So in terms of quality, I would be confident, even at this point, in saying that these, will match, or deliver a similar experience. But what they are lacking at the moment, as every new system is, are native lenses. Now, I say native because you can stick an adapter on it and then put any other lens on it. And I was very interested with Sony's approach on this. Normally, when we go to presentations and there's a new system, which of course comes out with 1 lens, 2 lenses, 3 lenses, 5 lenses, in this case 5 lenses, although we've only seen 3 of them, they always show you a roadmap. They say, it's okay, because next year we're going to have this, 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 and this, and the year after that, we're going to have this, this, and this, and it's like, yeah, but that's 2 years away. But Sony were completely open from day one, saying, yeah, use an adapter. We've got adapters for full-frame Sony Alpha lenses. But yeah, by all means, use a Metabones adapter, stick on Canon EF, stick on Nikon lenses. Karen and I were shooting with a Nikon 14-24 on the A7R last night, and it seemed to work pretty well. That was on a Metabones adapter. I've seen lots of people using the Metabones Canon EF adapter.
And that's just a stopgap until the lens sort of matrix gets filled out on the Sony side.
But the idea is they want to go to people and say, look, you know, you've got your existing Nikon or Canon lens collection, swap the body out, but keep your lenses. Of course, you lose, in the case of the Nikon, the autofocus. And in the case of the Canon, the focus becomes, you know, slower. So you're not going to have exactly the same experience in terms of speed, but at least you can stick them on there.
So so that's looking at it from the perspective of the DSLR owner moving down or laterally over to these guys. What about from the other way up? The OMD owners, the GX7 owners, the Micro Four Thirds crowd that are saying, hey, I want all my size savings and a large full frame sensor. Should they be considering this, or and giving up the whole world of Micro Four Thirds lenses that they can use, or what do you think?
This is a question that's close to us both, because we both use Micro Four Thirds quite a lot. The reason I went into Micro Four Thirds was initially not about the bodies, but about the lens selection. It's got a very broad native lens selection. They're extremely good quality. People look at the smaller sensor size of Micro Four Thirds and see it as a disadvantage in terms of noise, tonal dynamic range, that sort of thing. But I see it as an advantage because, as we've discussed before, you can design lenses that perform much better in the corners. And I'm very, very satisfied with the Micro Four Thirds lenses I've got because they're very sharp right in the corners and the edges. If this can do that with lenses that aren't massive and massively expensive, then that might be something I'd be looking at. But to be honest, my photography is all under 400 ISO. These are not going to give me any noise advantage. They'll give me a slight resolution advantage. What I'd be losing from Micro Four Thirds if I went to one of these was the huge native lens collection. I'd lose in the case of having an Olympus body built-in image stabilization. That is fantastic. Works extremely well.
It does,
So those, and the touch screen. And if you're on a Panasonic, a touch screen that comes out. So these are big usability differences, and also differences in terms of the lenses. So for me, you know, it's hard not to get excited about a big sensor in a small package. You're like, oh, it's got a full frame sensor in it. You know, this is great. But for me personally, I like the lenses, I like the touch screen, I like the built-in stabilization of my existing system. But it's amazing, you know, this is version 1. And already we're going, oh, I don't know, it could be there. And for lots of people, it will be there already. They're really exciting products. So bottom line, given the choice today, and of course I'm putting you on the spot because you haven't done your in-depth review in the camera lab, right? Given what you know today and what you've learned this week, and you had to make a choice between going with one of these guys and let's say lenses were here and you could get a comparable set of lenses. Let's say, say the lenses were here and you could replace your normal lens set on your OMD with Sony glass. Would you move to this camera and away from the OMD? So glass is not an issue. If those lenses were roughly the same size and weight, and especially quality at the edges. And I don't think that will be the case, because if you want a full frame lens to perform very, very well in the corners, it's either very big, very heavy, very expensive, or that there's normally something has to give. So I just can't imagine that it's going to... I mean, this is beautifully portable with the 35mm 2.8. This is very compelling. I love shooting with this combo, and the 55 is small as well. But you get this zoom, that looks pretty big to me. And they get bigger. And I keep looking at the full frame fast lenses, and they're even bigger, and I think, I don't know, I could end up with a heavy bag again. And I got into this game to try and have a lighter bag. And it's trying to pull you back in. It is. It's trying to pull you back in. Every time I try and get out, they pull me back in. I love it. That was good. Yeah, do you like that? That was good. Yeah, thank you. All right, Gordon, so cameralabs.com. Yes. That's the site. Around when do you plan on having your reviews ready for this? Well, with something like this, it's so big, it's an ongoing process. So already I have a detailed preview. I have a video interview that I filmed on the day that these were originally announced. I've got a ton of sample images and videos on there already. And this will just kind of keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I'll have image quality comparisons, and then finally the full review. We're at the end of October now. I would hope within the next couple of weeks, I'd say mid-November, it should all be complete. But, you know, go and look at it straight away, because there's a lot of content there right now. Yeah, absolutely. So perfect. Thank you for that. Also, Karen Hutton is going to have a review up, or a preview, or some sort of beautiful insight into these guys over on stuckincustoms.com. So make sure you check that out. And I will probably have something on This Week in Photo as well. So definitely check that out too. So
lots of cool data. These are fun cameras. This has been a fun week, huh?
It has. I've had a great time. They are really, really nice cameras.
They are, and yeah, like you said, I agree with you on all your points, and I think this is a shot across the bow for those guys, you know, because of the arguments that people have been levying for years versus, you know, about mirrorless versus DSLRs are slowly but surely going away.
Definitely.
So cool. We'll see what we see. All right, I'm Frederick Van Johnson, This Week in Photo. Thanks for watching this video.